Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking time to come and join us in this morning's webinar, Data Privacy Risk in the Working from Home Era. Without any further ado, I would like to invite our President, Mr. J. Parra, to give you a few words. Parra, please.
Right. Thank you, Angie. Good morning to all CEOs, fellow practitioners. It's great to see you all back again for the third webinar of AFAS. The topic today is going very interesting. All of us working from home is definitely concerned about PDPA rules, data protection, data privacy, and many areas. We are openly talking about many things within the small space at home or at office. So this topic that we have jointly organized with Straits Interactive will be very useful for us to ensure that data privacy risk is not breached in any way. The speakers today, there are a couple of speakers from Straits Interactive. They will be sharing with us for the next 1.5 hours the importance of data privacy. AFAS will continue to bring in more such webinars. I believe the first two webinars, many of us have benefited out of it, and we are working towards bringing more such webinars. So without much further ado, I'd like to introduce Sean from Straits Interactive to do his presentation. On to you, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Jaya, for an insightful speech. Welcome everybody to our webinar, Data Privacy Risk from the work from home era. I am joined today by my colleague QC, and who will be sharing about cyber scams also. But mostly I'd like to thank all the members of the Association of Financial Advisors for actually taking the time to come today. Before we actually kickstart this presentation, I also would like to extend my apologies because our founder and our Chief Marketing Officer, Alvin To, was unable to make it today. He has fallen ill, but one thing I wanted to share with you guys that it's whenever there's an emergency, right? For any organization, they need to have a business continuity plan in place. They need to activate it. In this case, when our Chief Marketing Officer was down on Monday evening, both of us was activated, and we are here today to serve you guys. So without further ado, right, I will now proceed to start the presentation. So this is basically the agenda for today. I'm going to start with a brief introduction to Straits Interactive and a quick refresher on what PDPA is, and I will share what are the risks from working from home. And we will provide some simple tips which you can use to secure yourselves while you work from home when you're using the devices. And we'll also be talking about what regulators expect from organizations and what are key concerns which management are worried about. And again, no MRT, no problem. I'm going to leave that towards the end to leave you guys guessing. Now, a very brief background of who I am. I've actually dedicated my earlier part of my career, about 15 years, to the financial services industry. I stayed about 6 to 7 years in a general insurance broker firm. So I'm very familiar with the financial advisory industry. Currently, in my current company, I manage the client portfolios for the hospitality, real estate, and the financial services industry. QC, maybe you would like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Quan Ching. I'm a manager of IT and info security in Straits Interactive. So what happened is that previously, I have several experience in IT industry. So in my previous jobs, I was managing clients' infrastructure and their info security. So it was across various industries, such as from F&B, healthcare, and financial sectors. So I did help manage some of the FI or FC's company as well. Yeah, over back to you, Sean.
Thank you, QC. So guys, I may be at some point be switching off my video because I want to ensure that we get the best broadband. I want the quality to be good for all of you guys. So just to share with everyone, because throughout this webinar, what you'll be hearing and seeing, right, are 3 logos at different junctures. So let me briefly explain what these 3 logos are. The one at the very top, the white background is Straits Interactive. I'll give you a very quick background in a bit. In the middle, you will see a cloud with an eye with a yellow background. That is our tool or our own cloud platform called DPO Inbox. Now that was developed by us to help DPOs, in their journey to demonstrate compliance throughout data protection. Now it's systematic, on demand, and easily operational, but I always feel that this DPO Inbox is a friend to the DPO. Now at the bottom, you will see DPEX, or the Data Protection Excellence Network. Well, it is an initiative where we work together. Okay, Straits Interactive works together with partnerships with different universities, privacy bodies, among many others, to help raise the standards of excellence for the DPO committee in the Asian region. All right, so basically, for those of you who have never heard of Straits Interactive, and this is the very first time, okay, we were founded in 2013. Our DNA as an organization has always been operational compliance. In fact, we have the largest group of certified privacy professionals and GRC, governance, risk, and compliance professionals in the region. And we've provided training to 600 companies and 4,000 course participants and more than 10,000 individuals. And we were appointed the regional trainers for the International Association of Privacy Professionals and the Open Ethics Compliance Group. But we, more than anything, we've been very blessed to have trained the regulators in Singapore, Malaysia, and also the representatives in Indonesia. So we cover over 20 courses that actually cover data protection and governance. And honestly, all our courses have undergone the highest level of scrutiny and accountability and have been approved for funding by IMDA and CITREP. In fact, if you were to look at our PDP website on the next page, almost all our courses are actually listed there. Now, for some of you, you've never seen this logo before. It's actually on the buses, on MRT stations, and even maybe on some of our name cards, some of your clients' name cards. So this is the Data Protection Trust Mark certificate. It is a certification for organizations who are able to demonstrate accountable and responsible data protection practices. Now, hundreds of companies have actually applied for the Data Protection Trust Mark, but only 32 companies in Singapore have gotten them, and Straits Interactive is blessed to be one of them. Now, some of you here may be from the IT department and some of you are not, but let me help you differentiate between security and privacy. Now, you see the red domain, the red circle, okay, that's the domain of information technology, information security. And typically they will tackle matters like confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, the blue circle that you see is what data protection laws cover. And that is the mandatory one, the regulated one. Unless you're an organization that is under the critical infrastructure, then you'll be covered under the cybersecurity law. But otherwise, if you're just a local SME, there isn't a law to govern you in regards to information security. But do take note, there is a law governing you to comply under the Personal Data Protection Act. And when you see the two worlds collide, when you see in the middle, when they meet in the middle, you will see that they share confidentiality, usage, and access. I'm going to share with you, 4 friendly words, okay? And I'm going to mention those words throughout this whole presentation. And they are collection, usage, disclosure, and storage. If you do any of these activities to collect personal data, then you're obligated under PDPA. Now, I'll share some quick pointers. At the collection stage, who is collecting it? What is it they're collecting? Is it online? Is it physical? Is it electronic? But more importantly, at the collection stage, you should only be collecting disclosing personal data for purposes for which an individual has given his or her consent. So what is the use of the personal data? What is the purpose of the personal data when you're using it? In many cases, how does that personal data flow throughout collection, usage, disclosure? How does it flow within your organization? Now, the main objective here is to ask yourself to ensure that your organization collects, disclose personal data that are only for the purposes that are stated, that are given. Do not use it for anything else. Now, for the storage and disposal, who has the right to access the data? For example, if it is a financial data of a client, should everybody in your organization have access to such information? Is it necessary? Or is it only the finance department or your senior management? Think about it. And of course, if a client data no longer has any business or legal purposes, then you definitely have to dispose of it. But how long should you keep it? How do you dispose of that data? Do you shred it? Okay, do you burn it? What do you do? So at disclosure, you should never disclose personal information to others without the consent of the individuals concerned. And if you are sharing your client information with third-party vendors, such as you're using cloud services, remember, you need to have proper data sharing agreements that should be in place when you're dealing with third-party recipients or data intermediaries. Next. So in the example of financial advisors, financial institutions, let me try and contextualize. The collection points, the people who are actually collecting personal data are the agents, the representatives. They are using forms that are either physical or electronic We're talking, there's also telemarketers and call centers who are doing cold calls. And in many cases nowadays, there are mobile apps where you actually consent to sign up to use those services. And these are where the collection points for personal data. And for the purpose, basically, if you're providing services like your life insurance, if you're providing investment services, you're using that, you're processing personal data for the provision of services of the company. And for example, once that life insurance policy is approved, right, you need to use their personal data to enforce the contract. And in many cases, right, you will also receive inquiries or feedback online. And you need to use the personal information that is given, okay, to process or carry out their instructions or response to any inquiries given to you on their behalf. And lastly, if a consent has been given by the individual, then the organization will use the personal data for marketing or promotional purposes. Okay, so the next question to be asking is, where is the information stored? Okay, and remember, right, if there's no legal or business purpose, you should dispose of it. You should not keep it anywhere in your organizations. Don't keep it in your computer devices, your cloud storage. These are all the storage points in your organization. And of course, at the disclosure part, okay, these are all the types of third-party vendors that are involved. You know, you have partners, okay, that affiliates that you're dealing with, that you're sharing personal data with. You have outsourced services, call centers, and even printing companies. So you need to make sure, okay, that you have proper contractual arrangements. You have data protection clauses that cover yourself when you're dealing with these third-party vendors. Now, Singapore basically has 9 obligations, 9 rules. And if you use collection, usage, storage, and disclosure, you can easily map it across this whole cycle. So it's very easy to remember. For example, when you're collecting, what do you need to do? You need to get their consent. And when you're using, you need to notify them of the purpose. You need to be sure that you're accurate in using their personal data. And also when you're storing the information, you need to ensure that you're protecting it. And you should not be keeping that personal data longer than what it is meant for. That's the retention part. And you need to make sure when somebody writes into your organization, okay, you need to come back to them. Let's say if somebody writes into your organization saying, okay, I've changed my address, you need to be able to come back to them within a period of time to correct that. And also the last part is the transfer part. If the data is moving outside your organization, these are all the rules and obligations of the Singapore PDPA. Now, with collection, usage, storage, disclosure, you also see quite a few breaches. And I'm going to share with you some of the breaches which I've seen over the last few years, but pertaining to the financial advisory industry. One of them under collection, right, is basically failure to get proper consent when you get referrals from your clients. That is under collection. Any referral, even if you don't take it verbally, although verbal is allowed, it is good always to have it documented. Under usage, okay, I've seen people who actually buy, okay, personal data. They buy and sell personal data of clients. You cannot use that. That's illegal, okay? Because when you buy and sell personal data, you haven't gotten their consent. You haven't notified them. These are marketing lists. And under basically storage, you know, when applicants or job candidates or financial advisor during the recruitment stages, those who are unsuccessful, what do you do with them? I've seen a lot of those recruitment forms being kept longer than it should be. And under disclosure, an example, I've seen for myself that somebody calling into the financial advisory firm asking about a policy, and the person, the receptionist answering, the administrative staff answering, didn't fail to authenticate the call. He actually revealed the personal data online onto the person who called. So you need to have proper authentication procedures in place. Next, please. Now, basically, I wanted to share with you the latest developments in PDPA. But one thing that is very important, and I think this will be important for all advisors, for every company, in fact. So there was a proposed amendments to the PDPA, the consultation that came out in May to the public. And it's closed, but this proposed amendment to the data protection bill, when it is passed, it will actually look at a fine of nearly 10% of your turnover or $1 million, whichever is higher. So for those of you, right now, the maximum fine is $1 million, okay? But with these new changes, you're actually liable for a fine that is 10% of your annual revenue or $1 million, whichever is higher. Another thing to take note is that data breach notification will become mandatory. So if you have a breach, or you need to have a data breach notification process, because when this law becomes when it has passed, you're only given 72 hours to respond to the regulators and individuals. So I want to share with you some recent data breaches. Actually, it's only a few days ago, and they are both in the financial industry. Yes, okay, so basically one of the enforcement cases was the Singapore Accountancy Commission. They were fined 5,000 because 6,541 personal data were breached. They were sent, these emails, these personal data were sent to a group of people. And what happened was that the organization admitted, okay, to the lack of robust processes to protect the personal data when they were sending out the emails. It was sent out wrongly. And even the staff who were involved in sending out the emails, they didn't know about the organization's personal data policies. They were not trained when they joined the company. And even then, the organization's data protection policies and procedures were not translated. You may have policies and you may have procedures, but they were not translated into security arrangements. How do you go about to protect that personal data? And one thing good about Singapore Accountancy Commission, what they did as a mitigating factor, okay, when they got into an investigation, they admitted to their error and they proceeded to undertake remediation. So this involved training sessions in cybersecurity, personal data protection for all their employees, and a revision of their policies and procedures on the handling of personal data. Now, the next one is the Central Depository Limited, Private Limited. Okay, so CDP basically handles your stocks arrangements. So what happened? They were fined 32,000 due to poor security arrangements. There were actual dividend checks of some CDP account holders that were mailed to addresses, resulting in the disclosure of personal data to other individuals. Now, all this was because CDP had migrated from one software to another. Now, whenever you're migrating from whichever software, from this to next, okay, it is important, right, yet you need to conduct proper and adequate testing. You need to try it out. You need to have an implementation that simulates real life. In simple terms, you need to test various scenarios. You need to make sure that nothing can go wrong. This was especially critical because CDP never did that. And PDPC, okay, one thing they took heavily into account, and they mentioned this, because the personal data that was disclosed, a lot of it has to do with financial information. Now, anything to do with financial information, PDPC does not, they frown upon it. When it comes to this type of information, this type of sensitive information, they require organizations to have stronger security measures to be put in place, because this type of sensitive information could cause severe harm. So now, basically, I will hand over to QC, who will actually share about security-related risks.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. So yeah, I'll be talking about cyber security. So what really happens in the cyber scam? As you know, all of us are now working from home. So criminals are also working from home during this COVID situation. So importantly, don't let cyber criminals into your machine or your network. So here are some articles that scams are increasing in our country especially. So here are some types of scams that you can get from the scams alert if you want to find out more. So what we'll be focusing on are the tech support, the banking, and the billing. So what happened is cyber scams are getting more sophisticated as time goes by, because what happened is that during this COVID-19, many businesses have forced to be more creative and innovate. So what happened is that because what happened is we need to innovate and be more creative because we can't go into the office and we will need to work from home. So what happened is cyber criminals are also clever. So what happened is they can develop the call centers with VoIP so they can work from home as well. And what happened is during the scam calls, their calls are so well scripted that they are able to qualify their target. Later, I will show you some videos over here. Now I show you the video that what kind of damage it can be done.
I was just on the internet when I got a pop-up. Computer is blocked. Is this the only card you have? Because that will cost more money. Hey, why are you crying, man? You're a very good man.
Security message. Please do not attempt to shut down or restart your computer.
Thank you for holding the line. I really appreciate your time and patience. My name is Chris Lawson.
Okay, it's starting warm where you are.
Yeah, it is very hot here in California.
Ah, bloody hell, I'll have to come over there then.
Yeah, please. We'll go to the beaches,
Ah, that'd be nice.
repair all the services which got broken, all right?
Yeah, I see that.
Sir, there would be a charge of $12.95, okay?
Oh, bloody hell, yeah, okay.
So let me get it done.
Information to anyone, like your PayPal login ID or password to anyone apart from you?
No, I wouldn't have done. So as usual, the only way to resolve this is for Peter to get access to my computer by following his instructions to download. All he needs to do is click on one link and he can blacken out my screen. This is what I see whenever he does this, and he will happily try to log into websites using my password because they've been stored in my browser.
Nice. You do have a very nice, still you do have 75 years old and you do have a very nice memory and everything, ma'am. If you want, you can have a glass of water or a cup of coffee as well.
The victim is completely unaware that this scammer is rummaging around her online bank account whilst her screen is blacked out.
You have your cell phone handy with you, right?
He immediately goes to the transfer money section.
Okay, what kind of cell phone is this? It's like an iPhone, or it's like Android phone? It's an Android phone, right?
He's very used to keeping the victim occupied so that she doesn't ask him what he's doing while her screen has been blacked out.
Hello? Okay, ma'am. So can you hear me?
I got my...
Confirm me?
Tell you?
Yes, ma'am.
44
Mm-hmm.
35
Mm-hmm.
24.
Okay, let me check. Let me check whether it is working or not.
And with the victim still believing he was PayPal, he was able to get around the security check. They blacken her screen again, they set a password and a PIN number which they don't tell her. Now with her screen blacked out, they start to look at all of the various files on her desktop. Having looked through some of her personal photos, they now want to use her webcam. Having locked her out of her computer, they begin to delete her
because the reason,
documents.
when we took our softwares from your computer, our softwares was protecting all the documents that you do have, but you told me that I don't want that money refund and whatever, so I just took that our software, and when we took our softwares, the happy all the documents that you do have on your computer, whatever, all has been deleted from your computer, okay? But yes, your all the computer, everything that you do have, which is because we took our softwares, that's why it's happened.
She has to watch helplessly as they start to delete all of her files, including all of her pictures. She's screaming at them to stop.
Yeah, okay, so that's the end of the short video. So like you all can see, why are we focusing on scams in this webinar? It's because most of us are working from home. So you do not have the same access that you enjoy while you are in the office physically. I mean, why do I say that? Because what happens is that if you face any IT issues, normally your IT department is nearby. All you need to do is maybe a short walk over and you can get an IT to help you. So in this new COVID-19 environment and the new normal, most of us are working remotely and different sites. So what happens is, before you give any remote access or open any suspicious files or being asked to open any application, please do check and verify. Because if you do not do that and you comply to what the person over the phone asks or the email or the message that you receive, you might get yourself into such trouble. What happens is that 94% of cyber attacks start with an email, and 80% of these attacks are phishing mails. So phishing mails can come from email. Then after that, next will be the WhatsApp and SMS, or the pop-up alerts that just now the video you have saw, whereby they will block your screen and maybe sometimes play some alarming noise so that it will make you panic. So normally when they create such situation to make you panic, your mind tends to get blocked. So what happens is that they are trying to hope that you might get into a situation whereby you panic and you're not sure what to do and you just comply to what they ask, and hence they breach your security. So what should you do? You should come out an incident and data breach escalation internally. So here's an example. If you make a mistake, inform your head of department or supervisor immediately to get them involved. So if it involves personal data or that is on your computer or phone, or you get malware, or inform your DPO and the IT or the info security officer. So in most of your FI companies, you all have compliance officer. You all can seek them for advice as well. So if there's an immediate serious breach and you need to do risk assessment, what kind of updates, that kind of thing, you will need to involve your management. And having said that, after you have determined that what kind of breaches or what kind of incident it is. So here are some examples. If it's a criminal activity or scams, you report to police. So here are the number that you can call for the police, or you can make an online lodge in the eyewitness. So if the threat belongs to cyber attack, you can contact CSA. Treat the government, government agency as a tool, because what happens is that we do have clients that have cyber attack. So what happens is that because their ITs, this new norm, the IT may not have the sufficient resources to support everyone at one go. CSA do reply the mails and come in and help to do some forensics and give them some instructions how to further contain or give them advices what are the next steps to do. And importantly, if it involves personal data or DNC related as well, you will need to report to PDPC. So here is one of the brochure that you all can take from, which is taken from our CSA. This is an infographic. They have a handbook online as well. You can go into this website to get. Another tool that you all can use is Have I Been Pawned? So what happens is that sometimes, we do receive emails that how come we didn't subscribe to this? And sometimes scammers, where they get their email addresses. So what happens is that because in our social gathering networking, we hand our name cards around. So what happens is people tend to store it in their computers and phone. So when their devices have been breached before, those data can be used against you. So this is a good website whereby you can go in, enter your email address to see whether is there any past data breaches, your company email, your personal email has been exposed before too as well. And they do tell you whether do you need to change password. So what are the common factors in all these scenarios? They are the people. So let me hand over to Sean, my colleague. Yeah, Sean, please.
Thank you, QC, for that lovely, insightful, and quick presentation. So people basically are primarily the major factor in a lot of the breaches. Okay, so there are two types of breaches. So previously, just now, right, QC was sharing about security-related breaches. The other type of breaches is basically the human factor, negligence, and sometimes maliciousness. In the current COVID-19 environment, many of you are currently working remotely, either all the way or sometimes splitting shifts, sometimes in your office, sometimes at home. But more and more, right, your laptop is becoming your office, your mobile is becoming your office, and your video conferencing software is becoming your tool. Now, what I want to do with you is that I want to share some simple tips how to work safely from home while using these three devices. And of course, we're going to use this lovely collection usage, storage, and disclosure. I like to call it our donut. And the 4 friendly buzzwords, remember, for as long as you use any of these activities to collect personal data, you are obligated under the PDPA. Now, for the laptop, basically under the collection, when it comes to third-party applications, remember to always check. Reason being that a lot of these third-party applications, if you don't use a trusted source, they can even copy and store your data on their servers, and even the data can be stolen from there. And some of these third-party applications even go about sharing your data with other parties, and they can even go about changing their behavior without notifying you. So in summary, right, you need to be sure that whichever application you're downloading, check first, check. Under usage, and I always like to say this, ensure that your login password, ensure you have one, and make sure the password is difficult. Now, one experience I've had in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've had multiple times where people have tried to log into my work mail. Okay, but because I set my password, and I have to change my password regularly. Another thing which I've done is basically I put in 2-factor. Under the storage part, okay, remember you must update your Wi-Fi router firmware. You need to change the router default passwords. Keep your laptop physically and technically secure. And under disclosure, okay, if you are printing any physical documents, quickly collect your physical documents relating to work from your home printer immediately. So under mobile devices, under the collection, so I always say that if you're going to download any app, you should always download from an official app store, Google, Apple, and if you can, read from the end user agreement. You'll be surprised how some of these apps, right, they take so many permissions. You know, you just click yes, 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 right? And then suddenly a simple app can have access to a lot of your personal information, your contact information, your location information. So don't do that. Download from an official app store, read the end user agreement if you can. Under usage, choose mobile security. Okay, just like computers, your mobile devices also need antivirus. They also need internet security. Make sure to select a mobile security software from a trusted provider. And more importantly, you need to keep it up to date. Under storage, if possible, I know it's difficult, try not to download personal data, client data on your phone. Try to use Drive, things like Google Drive, okay, to access personal data or client data. But if you have to download it, you need to have a practice of deleting that data immediately from your mobile phone after you've used it. Under disclosure and transfer, get consent, okay, from your group member if you are deciding to share his or her personal or sensitive information with the rest of the group or to any third party. Remember, even though you may be friends with the person for a long time, okay, don't share their personal data without asking them first. Now, I've seen many a time, right, where they've agreed to refer to another person, and then the friend basically says, I never agreed to that. So you need to have it documented. And if it's in WhatsApp, that's good. That's fine also. Just make sure it's documented. So when you're using video conferencing platforms under the collection, okay, you need to look at and research your conferencing tools. There are so many out there, but you need to get comfortable reading the privacy policies of those tools, the websites and the apps when you're using these tools. Under usage, when you're hosting an online meeting, only admit invited participants who sign in with the correct password. Verify their identities in the waiting room, okay, and be very, very familiar with the video conferencing platform settings that you're using. Under disclosure, do not record the sessions, okay? This is important unless you have notified the participants in advance about that. Do not share personal or sensitive data during a video conference unless the participants agree to that. So under storage, if that session is being recorded, okay, know where the recording will be stored, okay, and make sure you set a retention period, meaning how long are you going to keep it, and delete it upon its expiry. And lastly, right, ensure that your platforms, they're always up to date and with the enhanced security features, update the software.
Okay, maybe I can chime in a bit because I know all of you are in the financial industry. So there's some MES regulation that you need to follow where you need to store your data, know where you store your data and have control over your data. So what happens is, in what Sean has presented, you all can review those third-party vendors that you use, their contracts, ask them where they store the data, etc. So that, and you document it down. This will help you with the regulation and in this PDPC journey as well.
Thank you, QC. So now we're going to talk about organizational competency and accountability and what are the expectations of the regulators. So one of the things is that PDPC actually introduced the active enforcement framework. Basically what it means, the posture of our regulators have changed. Their mindset has changed over the last few months. There's a fundamental shift from compliance to accountability. Now, what does that actually mean? What does it mean for organizations? Previously, if you had SOP, it means you have compliance. But now, when it comes to accountability, it means you need to have evidence to show them. In simple terms, accountability is about showing evidence. Some of the top 5 questions, right, regulators will they will ask organizations to show their accountability. Things like, what risk assessments have you done? Have you done it? Have you reduced your risk? What relevant policies and procedures have you implemented? Now, recently, just to share with you, I was meeting up with an insurance broker about 4 months ago, and looking at their the external privacy notice, I realized that they haven't updated it. The last time they did that was in 2016. You need to look at your privacy policies, both your external and your internal policies, and you need to update because you know, the guidelines, the rules are always changed. And once you've updated it, have you gone about to implement it? And that's very important. And of course, what percentage of your organization has been trained? Now, our regulators are very reasonable, okay? If you have 100 staff, they don't expect all to be trained 100, you know, but of course, the PDPA has been around for quite a while. And if you only train 5 or 6 people, okay, in the last few years, that's not reasonable. Okay, you need to have training done and you need to show evidence that the training has been done. Next. Now, of course, for individual FAs, okay, these are actually questions for them to think about. Have you participated in risk assessments? Have you been trained in any recent relevant SOPs and policies. To give you an example, has your company spoken to you about work from home policy? Have they shared with you what to do? What to do with your mobile, what to do with your laptop, what to do with your video conferencing devices? And how recent have you received internal, external training on PDPA relating to your processes? And you need to make sure your practices are updated. These are the top privacy risks, right, that we see in businesses. Now, one thing is about no untrained DPO. Even if you have a DPO, was this someone that was errored? Were you errored because no one else wanted the responsibility? Because if this person is errored and he's never been trained, how is going to ensure that the rest of the staff are trained? You need to make sure that your DPO is trained, at least competent. Now, very particularly, I want to talk about non-compliant vendors. Now, this has been one of the biggest issues, okay, in a long time, where several of them have been investigated and have gotten their employers into a lot of trouble because of the fact they were processing data on behalf of the employees, but basically they were not protecting their customer data. And case in point, let me give you an example of KBox, okay, where the vendor was managing the KBox database. And you know, they happened to be hacked. In fact, I remember the password and the ID for the system that was hacked. It was admin for both password and for the ID, admin. And more importantly, you know, it was so weak, their processes, that amazingly the staff who had actually left KBox, you know, they were still able to access this database months after they had left. And then when KBox actually found out and they asked their vendor, why is it that you never informed us that we got hacked? You know, they basically told them, you never said I must tell you in the contract. And this is a true story. One of the reasons why they both got into trouble, especially, there were no data protection clauses and both parties were fined 60K. Now, the next risk will probably be weak security. Now, when we talk about weak security under PDPC's, what they expect from organizations is to have reasonable information security practices, firewalls, software updated, training for staff. And I would like to talk about incident response plan. You need to have a clear incident handling channel. Now, earlier on, I've been talking about a breach notification management plan. What I want to make it simple is that if an incident happens, okay, who should be notified? What should the DPO do? What are the next steps? Should they escalate to the, if somebody, a staff knows there's an incident or there's a breach, should they escalate to the relevant managers? Should they escalate to the DPO? Should the IT get involved? One of the things that happened to Sing Health, where there was a major breach, was that basically, you know, the junior staff saw the incidents and they didn't do anything. They didn't bring it up to their superiors. If a breach has happened and it has led to an investigation by PDPC, now a typical flow of process when investigation has started, okay, it can take up to 18 months for a full investigation, or for as quick as 3 months for one that is discontinued. But as I was mentioning just now, with the release of the active enforcements, there are actually 2 more enforcement actions that are taken into consideration. Now, one of them, which I'm going to speak about, is the expedited decision. Now, if a company, the company that got into trouble and the breach, the nature of the breach is similar to previous cases or precedent cases with similar categories of facts, and the company decides to say, okay, it's an upfront admission, they are wrong, you know, and they take full responsibility. In these cases, in the expedited decision cases, even when financial penalties are involved, the organization's admission of its role will be taken in consideration as a strong mitigating factor. So instead of waiting for 18 months, right, the case can be closed much quicker, maybe up to 6 months. It's basically a confession. I confess I made a mistake, I admit it, and I will seek to remedy it. Now, the one that I would like to talk about in particular is the undertaking decision. Now, in the event of an investigation, organizations that can demonstrate to the PDPC that they have in place proper accountability practices, monitoring, and remediation plans. Now, only certain companies have this. They can request of the PDPC for an undertaking option in the case of a data breach. Now, only a few organizations can get this, and one of them is basically a data protection trust mark certified organization. What essentially happens, undertaken, is a written promise by the organization to PDPC that they will execute a fully developed and prepared contingency plan to resolve the data breach internally. What it means basically is they will resolve the breach internally and report back to the regulators. It's tremendously good. For these companies who have data protection trust mark, they have this option to sign an undertaking letter, and the benefits are shorter time to closure, meaning it's not going to take 18 months. It could take up to 6. Okay, you won't get your name splashed out in the media. You know, you won't be seeing all these companies. Recently, a lot of companies have gotten media attention for the wrong reasons. So there's no name and shame. And depending on the outcome, depending on the extent and severity, okay, there is no outcomes as per full investigation. And even then, the Data Protection Trust Mark, we've discovered that it's been recognized for actually many branding awards. It's actually one of the criteria, prerequisites for actually taking part in the branding awards. Next. As you can see, under one of the sections at the very bottom, the Data Protection Trust Mark certification is one of the major prerequisites for taking part in this branding award. And one of the things which I've seen more and more in the last few months is that a lot of organizations, okay, vendors have been required by the customers to actually go for the Data Protection Trust Mark, because it is a sign that you have good data protection, good and reasonable data protection practices within your organization. So basically, one thing to consider and factor in, where are you currently, your status and progression? How is your level of readiness? Do you have legal compliance, meaning that you've appointed a DPO, you did a policy a few months ago, a few years ago, you know, you haven't updated it? Or are you able to show evidence? Are you able to be accountable? Do you have operational compliance? Are you operationally compliant? Now, I will show you how you can go about complying with the PDPA and what are the questions which management asks. Now, over the years, right, we've received several questions, the key management questions that they ask when it comes to being operationally compliant. And over the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I will actually show you how it can be done. Now, how do we go about complying with the PDPA? Now, my advice today is that you need a framework, okay, a compliance framework that is operational, okay? And this is the framework that I'm going to be mentioning about the next 4 key buzzwords: assess, protect, sustain, and response. Because remember, without a systematic framework in place, how are you going to sustain compliance within your organization? Basically, one of the things that you need to do when it comes to this framework during the assess stage, let me share with you briefly. There are a couple of assessments which you need to go through. Now, before we can even go and do this, basically you need to appoint a data protection officer and you need to have a committee in place. Now, I will share how we can go about doing that. So there are a couple of assessments that we need to do during the assess stage. Things like, you know, you need to see where is your organization benchmarked against the 9 obligations in the PDPA. Where are they? How much do they understand about the PDPA? This is a gap analysis. Secondly, you need to find out what data are you collecting? Why are you collecting them? Where is the data moving? Who is collecting your personal data? So this will be your data inventory, your data mapping, and you need to do a baseline audit. So when you come to the protect stage, basically, you know, you've done the 3 assessments, you already identified a considerably long list of risks within your organization, then you can go about addressing the risks. Earlier on, I've actually flashed a question that said, have you done your risk assessments? What forms of risk assessments have you done? This is what I'm talking about. You know, you've done your risk assessment and you need to address the list. You either accept, avoid, reduce, or transfer the risk. And after that, when you've done this, you have a strong basis to actually draft out your policies. When you have your policies approved, SOPs and policies approved already by management, you can go about having training physically, either via town halls, learning, regular communications, even you can have campaigns to communicate the policies. You need to do audits, okay? Not every month, but maybe twice a year. And all this forms part of the sustain stage. So all this basically, as I was sharing, right, is part of a data protection management program. Now, the slide you see is a snapshot of a step-by-step plan, how we guide our DPOs and their team through a systematic data protection management plan with the use of our DPO inbox. Now, I'll show you a couple of slides in the next one. Now, as I was mentioning, before you can run a data protection management plan, you need to know who needs to get involved within your organization. Again, I don't want to be so naggy, but let's remember our 4 favorite keywords: collection, usage, disclosure, storage. Okay, look at your departments and who are the key stakeholders that are engaged in those activities. Okay, you get something like this, but I wanted to share with you based on my experience, basically some of the key stakeholders are the directors of wealth management, group employee benefits, the stakeholders, the head of departments handling group employee benefits, handling insurance benefits, the guys handling sales and distribution channels, your business operations, These are some of the heads of departments that I've encountered that basically handle personal data in your industry, in the financial industry. Next. Now, let me show you some snapshots of what are the risks. Next. So earlier on, I was talking about compliance risks, inventory risks, process risks. Okay, so if you have new things that come on board, new projects, new processes that come on board, for example, right, if you decide to take things like, you know, a new, like Zoom, if you decide to take Zoom, by right, you need to do a data protection impact assessment. So that is one of the risks that you should be looking at. But for a data protection management program, you're looking at compliance, inventory, and process risks. Next. Now we're looking at the compliance side. You can see in red, amber, and green, basically. So here is amber and red. These are the colors of the people who actually went. They went for the assessments. You know where they are against the obligations. And you can even see what are the departments involved. So most importantly, especially for all the senior management here, the directors, what you want to know at the end of the day, you want to know what are the risks within your organization. Your top 10, your top 15 risks, you need to identify what are the top risks by probability, what is likely to happen, likely to occur, and what is those risks that have the highest impact, the damage that it could have on your organization. And that's what a data protection management program will help you identify, and you will be able to address those risks. And of course, basically, you want to be looking at your data protection policies. Now, there are a whole lot of them. I won't be speaking too much about it today. You have your data protection notices, your consent registers. All these policies, next, fall under the universe of data protection. So some of it may apply to your organization, some of it may not, but things like your bring your own device policy definitely applies. Your standard operating procedures, okay, like for certain departments, your HR, you may need a retention policy. Things like that, it applies. Definitely your IT policy, you need to have that. Okay, so I've actually shared with you what needs to be done, okay, a data protection management plan. So a lot of you will be thinking, wow, that's a lot of things that we need to do, and it's going to cost us a lot of money. We don't have enough time. So one of the things we say at Straits Interactive, if there's no money, no resources, no time, no problem. So let me share with you. If you have no money, okay, basically what I want to say, we have multiple buckets of funding. I mean, the Singapore government, there's no other government in the world, okay, that, wants organizations to spend their money. There's so many buckets of funding, and it can go up to 90% depending on the type of organization. There's 5 buckets altogether. Next. Now, if you don't have resources, meaning your organization is very small and you don't have a DPO in place, there's even a chance where you can actually appoint a DPO using the Place and Train, a professional conversion program. And basically the funding for this covers both training and support up to 6 months. And depending on the age, it can go up to 90%. So you can get your newly established DPO fully funded. And one thing I want to highlight here, a lot of my clients, which I've introduced this program, so they don't have to be a DPO directly. So it could be someone who basically they're hiring because they're looking for HR people. So they can hire the person under HR, but they need to go for training as a DPO. So time. Now, one thing I want to say that a lot of organizations always say, how long is this going to take? It's going to take many months. It looks like it's a lot of work that needs to be done. So there are 2 good things that I wanted to share. It can take up to 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the availability of your schedule, what is comfortable for you, but we can go up to 6 to 8 weeks. And secondly, especially in this current environment, the option for online training and consultancy is available. So basically, I've come to the end of this session today. So one last thing I wanted to share, this is an outreach. I want to thank the Association of Financial Advisors Singapore, everyone there for giving us this opportunity. And of course, this is the DPEX network. Please, this is an initiative where you can join membership for free. You can get webinars, articles, research reports. To find out more, if you're interested, if you're an experienced or new DPO, this membership is free. Please, I advise you, take a look at it, join it. Okay, so if there is anything that you do want to contact me, this is my email. Just reach out to me anytime and I will come back to you. So I guess now we can go about doing the Q&A. What do you think, QC?
Yep, we can start answering some Q&A.
Hi, Chen-Li, thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Yeah.
So there's a question that is DPO issued by your local regulator or is it by a regional or global certification? So the Data Protection Trust Mark is actually issued out by IMDA, and it's not a global or regional certification.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add, it's a good question. So for some of the organizations, what they're looking for is that after getting a local certification, the DPTM, the trust mark, which is administered by IMDA, they may look towards some of the regional certifications as well. Okay, so do let us know if you're interested in that. We actually didn't intend to cover this for today's session. Right, Sean?
Yeah, definitely. But
yeah.
Thank you for asking that, definitely. That's great. Now, okay, this is an interesting question. I want to hear what Chen Li or even myself. So one of the participants was asking, currently in this environment, my bosses are actually they're taking a wait and see approach. My competitors are not doing anything. Why should I be spending money and time to implement the practices of protecting data? So with now everyone working from home, how safe is the data? Who should be responsible? And has the act included more clauses? Oh, this is a long question. What do you think? Chen Li, I leave this to you.
Wow, okay. So Sean, you'd like to throw me all the difficult questions.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, just for your knowledge, Chen Li is a fellow in privacy. Okay, there are not many people around. So he's a subject matter expert. So if you guys have any really, really difficult questions, please put it in the Q&A.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, so okay, let's see. We are all working from home. So first of all, right, who should be responsible for the data? Now today I understand I'm speaking to a very special crowd. So some of us, we are working individually. Okay, some of us, we work, we run an agency. Some of us, we run an association. So the quick answer is everyone is responsible for the data. Okay, but who is going to answer to PDPC, the regulator? All right, now if you are so-called a self-employed professional, okay, then you're actually answerable. Okay, because under the PDPA, you'll be viewed as a legal person, as an organization. Yeah, so that's something to take note of. Okay, so I believe Sean has already shared as well. There were previous enforcement cases. Okay, and the individual has been implicated, but that's also because of this very unique position. Now again, if you consider who's going to answer, okay, there are a few ways to see it. One is who is going to bear the consequences, for example, of a fine by PDPC. Yeah, so that would definitely be the organization. But don't forget that if you're working if you're not part of the team, of the agency or association, then there are also internal policies that will have disciplinary actions. Now, of course, I won't go as far as to say that definitely there will be some other kinds of action, for example, suspension of licenses. But I come across from this angle that if you're ever involved in an investigation, then that's a very significant amount of your time that's going to be taken up. So that's my quick answer. Who is responsible? Actually, everyone is responsible, because if you are handling personal data, then you don't want to cause any of these lapses. Yeah, so that's a joke that we were sharing during this WFH, work from home situation. So in the past, Singaporeans, we have three favorite hobbies. We like to go out to eat, to shop, and we like to complain. But right now, because we are all stuck at home, we cannot go out to eat, cannot go out to shop, so we stay at home and complain. Yeah, okay, so any jokes aside, huh? But one thing we do see is that there is a very significant number of complaints being made. So for those of us, I just came from another call. So I was being invited to share a bit more on the recent cases. So just a couple of days back, PDPC released 8 more enforcement cases. So the key message here, people will continue to complain. So we don't want to be on the receiving end of the investigation. So that's why everyone should be responsible, especially if you're handling personal data. Does that help to answer the question, Sean? You happy with that?
Yes. Yes, it does. Oh my, there's more questions coming in. Okay, for platforms, Zoom, Microsoft Teams that store personal data overseas, how can we ensure that we comply to the PDPA? Does this fall under the transfer limitation obligation?
Okay, so wow, okay, I like this crowd. We are getting more technical. Very good.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so maybe for the benefit of everyone, let's talk about the transfer limitation obligation. Okay, simply put, if you are sending personal data outside of Singapore, okay, to another organization outside of Singapore, then there are certain conditions you need to meet. For example, okay, let's say Sean is based in another country. Sean, name me your favorite country.
Thailand.
Thailand, okay. Let's say Sean is based in Thailand and I'm sending data over to Sean to store for me in Thailand. Yeah. So definitely this will be part of the transfer. Then now imagine on my part, what should I do? Before I send the data to Sean, I must ensure, okay, I must do some kind of due diligence. I must check whether this is a reputable organization, whether they have data protection practices in place. Yeah, because we look at the cases that's happened around the world. Many reputable organizations have also been found to be in breach because they did not have good practices, good data protection practices. So that's the first thing. Now, when we talk about Zoom, we talk about Microsoft, all these big companies. I think my first tip is go in and check whether they have a policy, okay, whether the DPO is actually reachable, then you will know whether this is a reputable company. Okay, so my personal opinion, Microsoft has been pretty much going on a very strong offensive on how they value privacy. Okay, that's one of their main differentiators right now. So they're trying to position it as a competitive advantage. So see how powerful it is, right? Even when you look at some of the advertisements like Apple, iPhone. So iPhone recently, in the adverts, they've been talking about how they value your privacy. It is safer with them. Now, it's quite interesting that they are not trying to establish a competitive advantage based on the specs, based on my camera is better, my processor is faster. So that may be an angle for you to consider as well. Yeah. So how do you know whether they're reputable? At least do that first slide check. Now, for many organizations based in Singapore, the other thing they will also check for is whether these companies have any certifications. So that's why you will see that some of these requirements are being geared towards getting a trust mark. So whether this is going to involve the transfer limitation obligation, whether you can trust them, I think that's the first level you want to check. Yeah. So if you're ever asked, so what do you do before you decided to use Zoom? Okay, so hopefully your answer will not be, yeah, because everyone is using, that's why I'm using. Yeah, but rather that, oh yes, I have checked out, they have policy, they have a DPO, I know that they have good practices in place, I'm comfortable with it, and I know that I will be supported, if there's going to be an investigation. That could be one way to look at it.
So there was an interesting question saying that about these vendors, right? About Box.com, Google, all these. So they said, how can we be sure that they are safe? So maybe what I was always in the consideration that these organizations, right? When you look at their privacy policy, they actually are benchmarked against GDPR. Would that make a difference?
Well, GDPR and PDPA are fundamentally different. Okay, although some of the principles do overlap. But what is probably more important is that instead of just looking at whether these platforms are safe, okay, that's an important consideration. But I have a bigger consideration for you. How are you using these platforms? Yeah, that is actually a bigger part. So I'll give a quick scenario. So for example, when we are using Zoom, all right. Now before you start the session, do you let people? Do you lock the meeting room? So that will be one of the considerations as well. So we probably have heard, right, during this circuit breaker this period, yeah, that there have been some people, there have been a phenomenon called Zoom bombing. Correct. So what happens is it's like photo bombing. People just randomly enter your Zoom session because they found a way to get your meeting ID. They found a way to get your password. Okay. So that's why it's more important in terms of how we're going to use this tool. How safe have we designed the process? And you will only know that when you have mapped out your process, okay, and then you will see what controls do you have in place. All right, so yeah, hopefully you find that useful. Don't just think about the platforms, whether it's safe or not, because I can assure you, when these companies, when they are facing, for example, GDPR, all these different laws, and for the matter of fact, Singapore's PDPA is even now being proposed to revise the fines, to increase it to up to 10% of gross turnover. Okay, so I can assure you the companies, these organizations, they are more afraid of you. More afraid than you, sorry. Yeah, they are more afraid of the fines of getting into trouble than you. So they will definitely be putting more effort. Yeah, I'm only saying this for the reputable companies with a good posture, with those who want to really do business. Yeah.
Okay, so I saw that. Okay, so there was a inquiry about what is the subscription for DPO inbox like. Okay, so anything that is pertaining to classes or courses, feel free to put it in the feedback form, and we'll get back to you. Okay, we're happy to share that with you. There was a question there was questions about courses. Just add it into the feedback form and I will definitely get back to you. Now, can an organization use hard copy name lists to let participants sign to attendance with all the, no. You can't put all the participants' name appearing on plain view, no. Okay, maybe.
Yeah, so maybe you also want to consider how are you doing it, right? Common sense will tell us, right, if you have the name, you have the NIC, you have everything on the same piece of paper, and I just flash it and show you and say, come, Sean, sign in. RQC, sign in. Then obviously that's going to be an issue, and it has already been reported in some of these enforcement cases. Let's not make the same mistake as what some people have already done. Yeah, but does it mean that you cannot use hard copy at all? Because that's considered, some of us are still using hard copy because for the ease of keeping records. What I've seen in some organizations is that they print out individual forms. Okay? For example, attendance sheets, they print out individually. So I have one for Sean, one for QC, one for NG, yeah? And then I'll pass it to them separately. But when I pass it to them, it is folded. So I fold it, I pass it to you, you see it, you open it up, you see it, confirm, you sign, take it back. Now for some of your forms, you may also be looking at, trying to verify the identity. You want to check the NIC. Yeah. So make sure you do have a more secure way of doing it instead of, hey, show me your IC there. Yes, which is what I have seen in person as well. Okay, so hopefully this will inspire all of us that we're not just thinking of, hey, can I use this or not? But let's consider how are we using it or how do we intend to use it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good questions. Yeah, keep them coming.
Okay, so I have one that it was, I'm not too sure what it's saying, but okay, so basically what it was mentioned was that talking about the DPO or the subordinates finding out about some of these breaches, do you really think this would be something they want to report this to their senior management? And even if the senior management is being informed, would they be taking responsibility to rectify the situations as the breaches may benefit directly or indirectly in generating revenue? And this will obviously affect the bottom line. Now, if these things can be covered up, why not overall? Who knows about these breaches as long as nobody makes a complaint?
Right, you know, this sounds a bit like what we used to joke in the army. Yeah, do anything you want, don't get caught, right? You know, the age-old joke. Yeah, but okay, so let's look at practically what has happened. Okay, don't mind me, I like to joke a little bit, yeah. So let's look at, for example, the Sing Health case.
Yes.
Sure, he thought he could cover up, he thought that, you know, people won't find out. But you see, after things has happened, the manager who didn't report it lost a job. So would he want to report to management? I think if he knew that he's going to lose his job, that it's going to affect 1.5 million records, it's going to affect PMD's records, then he probably would have wanted to report to the management. Yeah, and even for the management, yeah, would they actually pay attention? Now there may be some misconception that, you know, it's all about the cost, it's going to affect the bottom line, they don't want to do it. Now actually this is on the larger level, it's part of corporate risk management. So there are some impacts that we may not see. The reputation damage. Yeah, so when the reputation is damaged, it takes a very long time to repair it. It takes a lot more to repair it. There are all these other aspects. When there's a breach, how much does it cost to do the cyber forensics? How much does it cost to recover the data? Okay, if you see your security smiling, I mean, you probably have seen how much, right? All these things can cost. Now, I can share with you some of my friends, because of the nature of things I do, I also do research and I write for Bloomberg. So I do come in contact with a lot of people. And one of my friends in the insurance business, he actually shared with me that a typical cost of doing some of these recovery actions is 4 times the fine amount. Yeah, so I see some of the cases, even like Marriott. So that's an international case, right? So yeah, you know, we are still debating how much they should be fined under GDPR. But in terms of the cyber recovery measures, okay, the cyber costs, it's already cost them. The last I checked was more than $350 million. That's definitely more than the fines. Yeah, so would the management be concerned? I think with greater awareness, both in terms of the enforcement cases, the consequences it impacts, as well as internal and external feedback from clients, from employees, management is paying attention to this. Yeah, especially those from the listed companies. It's even a discussion. It's even one of the items from the board of directors. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I think once people realize how much it's going to impact them, will they want to raise it? Definitely.
Okay, that's a really good way to look at it. Yes. Well, we still have a flood of questions coming in. I really don't know which one to look at now.
Okay, I think in the interest of time, maybe we'll just take maybe 3 more questions.
Okay, just one thing. There was a comment made by one of the participants saying that a lot of us are one-man agencies or so, small medium enterprises, and compliance requirements, they have a hard time with these compliance requirements. So, look at the feedback form. Get in touch with us. I will share with you what we can help. We do have something for small organizations. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Well, I think maybe one of the angles as well is if you're a one-man team, do maybe a few ways I can consider. One is you can reach out to us if you want to get it done yourself, and we can help you a little bit on that. Or because everyone we are all in this industry, right? And there may be you want to exchange some of the views and practices with your peers as well. Yeah, because instead of you spending all the time to map like 10 or 20 different processes, maybe some of you have already mapped some. Maybe the others have mapped other processes. Yeah, it's group think, group share, and then you can do it more effectively. All right. Because one of the very important things is that so let's consider this. Because one of the important criteria for PEPA is that you are able to manage or able to handle even the grievances that come to you. Of course, ideally, we want to prevent all forms of breaches. Ideally, yeah. But let's look at it. Even for the really huge MNCs, they are still facing this challenge. Okay, so PVC is also reasonable. I mean, okay, some of you may be shaking your head. Huh? Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing some of the responses. But I mean, I assure you, like, I do get in touch with them. Okay, we talk a bit as well. I find them pretty reasonable. But the issue is like what some of you have mentioned in your feedback is how it's being communicated. Yeah, how how's expectations are being managed. Okay, so there are these different components of understanding the PDPA, translating it to operations. Yeah, and what I can share from one of my industry colleagues, so they are in the same industry, data protection. Okay, so what they shared with me is that if you are small, okay, then it won't be reasonable to expect that you have the same level of, for example, IT security as an MNC. Okay, but at the same time, if that is one yardstick, one spectrum, one end of the spectrum, then the other end is that you also cannot be expected to not do anything. So it's about understanding, finding out more, learning more, and then seeing what can be reasonably done. Okay, and one part of it is being able to respond quickly. Okay, it's being able to handle these cases so it doesn't get full blown. Yeah. But okay, today it's not a training course, so I can't go into too much details. Just wanted to give you some assurance, that is reasonable.
Okay, so okay, we're coming to the end. So just a quick reminder, fill up the feedback forms. There's also a $10 grab food voucher. Yeah, grab it.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe I was looking through all the questions, right? So maybe one tip for the agencies, right, is that since we're talking about trust and all these things, it's all based on trust. So it's all based on the objective of gaining trust as well. So I have some friends in the insurance industry, so they run their own agencies, and they've been telling me as well that they want to grow. Okay, they want to grow their agencies, they want to grow a bigger team, and that is where I want to encourage you that if you have these practices in place, do reach out to your fellow friends in the industry. Maybe you want to position this as a competitive advantage as well. Yeah, just wanted to share this very quickly.
Please, that's fantastic. I think, let me see if there's maybe one more question. Now, this is an interesting one. Okay, so I disagree that a self-employed FA rep is solely responsible for any breaches, simply because the FA firm itself has not competently set up proper systems and procedures to protect the data or even in the usage. How can the FA rep be blamed when the only form of communication is just simply pushing any information, PDPA guidelines to the FA rep when it's being circulated to them, assuming the FA rep understands the contents of such communications? Whoa.
Wow. Okay. So whoever asked this question, don't worry. So I'm not a fan of Liverpool, but you will never walk alone. All right.
Yes.
So
yes.
Just aside. Now, if you are working with a FA firm, then you would expect that they should provide you some support instead of just giving you some guidelines. Yeah. Now, for the FA firm that you are perhaps working for, now don't be discouraged, because when I look at some of the enforcement cases, this is something that keeps coming up. Yeah, people ask that, I need the support, and when investigations do happen, okay, typically what I've observed is that they will investigate both the firm and the individual. Okay, so if the firm has not been providing sufficient support, then PDPC will have a good chat with them as well. Because at the end of the day, we want to do things not just because we want to comply with PDPA, but because we want to build trust with one another in this industry. That's how we all grow together, right? It's a shared responsibility. So I don't know if there's any misconception that that you are solely responsible, even though you are working with another firm, then I would like to assure you that this is a shared responsibility. Okay, and ourselves being in this industry, we see as a shared responsibility that we want to try and improve the communications, help our friends as much as possible across industries, and that's why we are really thankful and lucky that we have good associations like AFA, who actually organize these sessions. Now, maybe what you want to consider, right, rather is if you already have some measures in place, some controls in place, then actually your question is, are they sufficient? And how quickly can you get this support? That could be a more relevant question. And if you find that interesting, I don't think we have the time today, but write in, and we'll see whether we put it into compile into a quick answer that we go through AFA, or if some of these questions come in and they're really useful, we may even do an AMA session, Ask Me Anything session. So because I see as we are giving some of our comments and opinions, we are getting more and more questions. So this is inspiring more thought. So that's good. Okay.
So one thing I wanted to share, if you guys have things now there are many questions. So if there are things about the PDPA that are on your mind, okay, like the increase in fines, the enforcement, things that you wanna hear about, you know, maybe like the data protection trust mark, put it in the feedback, and then we'll have a discussion with AFA if that is something we can do in another webinar, because we're here definitely. I mean, we're here to serve you.
Okay. Sean, I saw an interesting question. Okay, now I get to see it. Yay. Let's see. Okay, so comparing two cases when 500 individuals with have their names leaked versus 10 individuals with names, ICs, and addresses leaked. Okay, does it mean that there is no need to report to the PDPC if they only involve a small amount of personal data? Okay, quick answer to that. First, there's no clarity right now. Okay, because it's still being discussed. It's part of the proposed revision items for the May. I believe it's May 28th. Yeah, I can't remember. It was one of the proposed revisions to PDPA. Okay, on whether on when you have to notify PDPC when there's a data breach. Now, when I look at the enforcement cases, the recent 8 of them, all right, then I will look beyond whether there's a need to report to PDPC, okay, but also whether it is going to be a mitigating factor, whether it's going to likely to result in a fine, result in some punishment, some actions. Okay, so first things first, when I see that that there's a very good awareness over here in this question. Okay, when we talk about different types of personal data, whether it's just about the names, whether it includes the IC number, the bank account number, for example. So you know that for NRIC numbers, bank account numbers, all this are actually considered quite sensitive. Yeah. So I would feel that for breaches that involve personal data that could be pretty sensitive, then definitely you need to have stricter security controls. You need to be more responsive, to be more proactive as well. Second consideration, when you have a large number of personal records being impacted, then it probably means that, right, if something has happened and it can affect such a large number, it probably can affect an even larger number. That's what we call the scope of impact. And once we are able to determine the scope of impact, then you will really know whether you need to take more serious action, more urgent measures, I'll say. Okay, so now think about it. Okay, if let's say initially 10 people wrote in to you to say that, hey, you leaked my IC number, I'm not happy about it. Now, if your thinking stops at, okay, I received 10 complaints, so it is about 10 of them, then you could probably be in a lot of trouble. Because think about it, if it's 10 people who are affected, you want to know what is the reason. Okay, if these 10 were affected because your database, somehow you put it on Google Forms and you didn't protect Google Forms. Okay, so because you put it on the online database for convenience, or you put it on an Excel sheet that you put on Google Drive, which somehow people got access to, then the scope of impact is not 10 people. If you have 10,000 names, 1,000 names on your form on the database, then the scope of impact is 10,000 or this 1,000. Now, if you think about that, then would you want to ask for help? Would it be from PDPC, be from the agency, okay, or be from experts? The answer probably is yes. Okay. Yeah. So hopefully this shares another kind of expectation. So personally, I have been involved in some investigations. I've been supporting some investigations, and that is why I'm able to share with you some of these different angles. Okay, hopefully you find that useful. It's a good question.
There is one question I think that QC, maybe this is the last question. Maybe QC, you can help answer. There was a question, may I know what controls can be put on email to minimize the unauthorized disclosure?
Oh, okay. Unauthorized disclosure. Oh, this is a good question. Hold on, let me see. Okay, what controls that you can put in for minimizing? So what happened is most of you applications on the email have changed. Most of us no longer always use the tool that Microsoft Outlook. So what happened is web-based mail, web mail or the Microsoft Outlook or Apple Mail, you can configure a delay send. So you can consider things like delaying your original mail being sent. Instead of immediately you press the send button, the mail sends out immediately. Maybe you can delay it about 15 to 30 seconds so that when you press the send, you know that I have some lead time for me to make amendments. Because what happened is, if in the past, most of us always have a function that you can use, is called record email message. But you must understand that in order for this function to work, you need both parties, that means both your company and the receiver end, to be on the Microsoft platform. So what happens is nowadays there are so many different platforms, so this feature no longer works perfectly. So yeah, if you ask me what kind of control that you can think of to prevent unauthorized disclosure, is delaying the send of the email, so that if any mistake found, you got time to react, instead of you give no time to react, and then you have to answer to PDPC when a complaint happens. Yeah.
So Casey, can I add? Yeah, I think delay sending is really useful. But like what I was told from Young, what I see in enforcement cases, check before sending. That is actually most important. So some of the common traps, would be that, let's say I'm sending to Sean. So when I'm typing in my email address, the to field, I would type Sean, and then I will just choose from the drop-down list what pops up from my address book. Okay, so I may end up sending to a different Sean. Okay, now that will be one of your concerns. So these things, you also want to see if you are sending it. Let's say you're sending a mass update to your clients. Hey, there's a new policy coming up. I have a new product to offer. All right. Then you also want to check whether you have sent that via the CC or the BCC list. Okay, so this will be some concerns to check as well. And this is more for those of us who are more familiar with PDPA. Yeah, that's more with the accuracy obligation, in terms of sending to the right Sean. Yeah, and then it's about the protection obligation when I send it to Sean and 1,000 different other people. Okay, so these are things that have happened repeatedly. Yeah, and I would say also that for those of us who run a larger team, or especially if you're recruiting new folks on board, then that is probably where you want to do a little bit more OJT monitoring, on job training. Yeah, just check before they send out, because I've seen it in other industries as well. When they send it to when they send it out to the wrong person from the wrong organization, especially when it contains rather sensitive information. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do now, thank you, QL, for taking the time to be here, answering all the difficult questions. What I'm going to do now is, firstly, I would like to thank the Association of Financial Advisors Singapore, Raymond, Jay Para, and Angie, for this. I want to thank the audience for actually staying up so long and giving us so many questions. And we're always happy to serve you and have another one in the future. But what I'll do right now is I would like to hand it back to Angie to close it off with your members.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Kui Cheng, and thank you, Chen Li. Thank you for sharing with our members. And dear members, I believe all of you are very excited and with all this informative webinar. Okay, what I can do is that we will consolidate the questions, and if they give me the answers, and then once I get hold of the answers, I can always send it to all of you. And if you do have any further questions, you can actually write into them, or like what Sean has said, put onto a feedback form and they will answer you. All right, I want to thank you all of you for taking time for the last 1 hour 45 minutes to be with us. And have a good day, and do stay safe, stay healthy. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Thank you, friends. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Raymond. Yeah.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Angie. Bye-bye.